She thought he was a volunteer. He owned the hospital. Hello everyone, before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us return to our main character. The rain had not stopped for 2 days straight over Westbridge City, turning the hospital parking lot into a maze of puddles and reflections. Inside, fluorescent lights hummed quietly over rows of tired faces and the sharp scent of antiseptic hung in the air. Anna Reed, a 27-year-old nurse, tightened her ponytail as the emergency room doors slammed open again. A patient on a stretcher, a furious relative shouting, and a doctor demanding vitals. Her shift had already gone 14 hours, but she did not flinch. Her calm voice cut through the chaos, steady and clear. When a man accused her of negligence and threw his coffee cup against the wall, she simply stepped forward and said, "Sir, please. Let us help him first." That was when she noticed the stranger standing by the supply cart. He was tall, wearing hospital scrubs that did not quite fit, with rolled sleeves and the faintest trace of paint or dust on his hands. He had been helping clean up spilled supplies, moving quietly like someone who belonged but did not. Anna had seen volunteers before: students, retirees, kind people who gave their time, but there was something different about this one. His eyes followed every movement in the with quiet understanding, not curiosity. When the chaos calmed, he approached her, holding out a clipboard she had dropped. "Rough night?" he asked, his voice low, warm. "You could say that," she replied, forcing a tired smile. "You new here?" "Sort of," he said simply. "I like to see things from the ground up." Anna nodded, assuming he meant volunteering for community hours. "Well, welcome to the madhouse," she said. "If you can handle tonight, you can handle anything." He smiled faintly. "I will take that as a challenge." Hours later, when the halls finally quieted, Anna found him again in the break room, scrubbing a counter that did not need cleaning. "You do not have to do that," she said. He shrugged. "Habit. I like keeping things in order." There was a steadiness in his tone that made her pause. He looked nothing like the hospital's wealthy board members she had seen in glossy newsletters. His sneakers were worn, his hair slightly tousled, his face marked with the fatigue of someone who worked with his hands. And yet, when he spoke, there was authority behind every word, the kind that came from leading without showing it. "Why are you really here?" she asked suddenly. He smiled but did not answer. Instead, he placed his cleaning rag aside, straightened, and said, "You remind me of someone who has not given up yet." Before she could respond, a call from the intercom echoed through the hall. "Another emergency." She grabbed her gloves and hurried away, but his words lingered. Outside, the rain continued to fall, tapping against the window like a quiet warning. She had no idea that the man she thought was just a volunteer would soon make her an offer that would change both of their lives forever. Anna barely slept that night. The echo of the storm outside matched the storm inside her chest. The next morning, she arrived early, coffee in hand, ready to face another shift. But the man from last night was already there, sweeping the corridor near the nurse's station. "You again," she said with a half-smile. He looked up, amused. "I told you, I like keeping things in order." "You sure you are not secretly applying for Janitor of the Month?" she teased. His quiet laugh surprised her. For a man she thought was a volunteer, he had a way of carrying himself that felt calm but commanding. Later that afternoon, chaos returned. An elderly patient went into cardiac distress, and half the staff was occupied in another room. Anna called for help. Before anyone could respond, the same man rushed in beside her, helping stabilize the patient, handing her equipment with precision that only someone experienced would know. When the crisis passed, Anna looked at him, breathless. "You have done this before," she said. He smiled faintly. "I pay attention." She wanted to ask more, but the intercom buzzed, calling her to the director's office. In the quiet hall, the click of her shoes echoed. Inside, the hospital director, Dr. Harris, sat with his usual serious expression. "Anna," he said, "there has been talk about last night's confrontation with the patient's family. Some donors are unhappy. You need to be careful. You cannot afford another incident." She nodded, swallowing her frustration. "I understand, sir." As she turned to leave, she caught a glimpse of the volunteer standing in the corner near the window, speaking softly with Dr. Harris. Their tone was low, professional. Too professional. Her curiosity flared again. Who was he really? That evening, she stayed late to finish her notes. The volunteer appeared once more, carrying 2 cups of coffee. "Peace offering," he said. "You look like you could use it." She accepted with a small nod. They sat in silence, the hum of monitors and distant beeps filling the air. After a moment, he spoke. "Why do you stay here, Anna? You could work anywhere." She looked down at her hands. "Because people here need someone who cares. Because no one else will." He studied her for a long second. "That is rare." She gave a tired smile. "Maybe foolish." He shook his head. "No. It is what keeps the world from collapsing." The way he said it carried a weight she could not explain. Days passed, and he continued showing up in unexpected places, pushing wheelchairs, fixing broken equipment, helping new interns find their way. Every time Anna saw him, her curiosity deepened. He was too skilled to be just a volunteer. Then, one Friday afternoon, everything shifted. A wealthy benefactor collapsed during a board tour. The staff scrambled, and Anna was the first to reach him. She began CPR while shouting for assistance. When she looked up, the volunteer was already there, kneeling beside her. He took over compressions with strong, practiced rhythm, guiding the team until the patient stabilized. Cameras flashed, board members panicked, but within minutes the man regained a heartbeat. The room fell silent except for the steady beep of the monitor. Anna turned to thank the volunteer, but he was standing now, face unreadable, giving quiet instructions to the doctors. Dr. Harris hurried in and said, "Mr. Cole, are you all right?" The words hit her like a blow. "Mr. Cole?" Harris turned to the group. "Everyone, please clear the room. Let the chairman breathe." Anna froze. "Chairman?" She blinked at him, her pulse racing. Ethan Cole, the hospital's owner, the silent philanthropist whose name was engraved on every wing of the building. Her mind replayed every moment: the scrubs, the coffee, the long shift side by side. Shame and disbelief collided in her chest. He met her eyes then, his voice gentle. "I did not mean to deceive you." But she could barely breathe. "You are the owner," she whispered. "And you let me believe you were just—" He took a step closer. "Sometimes the only way to understand how things truly work is to be part of them." Anna shook her head, backing away. "You watched me struggle. You let me think you were one of us." His expression softened. "I am one of you. I never stopped being that." She stared at him for a long second before turning away, her heart pounding with betrayal and something else she could not name. Outside, the sky had cleared, but her world felt heavier than ever. She had thought he was a volunteer. Now she knew the truth, and it changed everything. The following morning, Anna tried to convince herself that what happened had been a misunderstanding. But every hallway she walked through had his name carved into the walls. The Cole Wing, Cole Research Center, Cole Foundation. It was everywhere. The man who had handed her coffee and swept the floor owned every inch of the place. Her pride burned quietly inside her chest. She avoided him the entire day, keeping her head down, working double shifts just to keep her mind off him. Still, the memory of his calm voice followed her like an echo. That evening, as she changed into her street clothes, she found an envelope inside her locker. It was plain, no logo, only her name in neat handwriting. Inside was a simple note, "Meet me in the chapel at 8 p.m. Please." For a long time, she considered throwing it away. But something in her heart told her to go. The hospital chapel was quiet, bathed in soft candlelight. She stepped inside and found Ethan standing near the back pew, his suit jacket folded neatly over the bench. "Thank you for coming," he said. She crossed her arms, guarded. "You could have just sent a memo. You seem to like those." His lips curved in a faint smile. "I deserve that. I owe you an explanation." "You owe me honesty," she corrected. He nodded slowly. "I started this hospital years ago with one promise to build a place where care came before money. Somewhere along the way, bureaucracy swallowed it. So, I came back as someone no one would recognize, to see what still worked and what did not." Anna stared at him, her anger slowly clashing with reluctant understanding. "And pretending to be a volunteer was your grand experiment?" "Maybe it was foolish," he said. "But you showed me what I had forgotten. That this place still has people who care for the right reasons." Her heart softened, but her voice stayed steady. "You made me trust you, Ethan. You made me believe you were like me." He stepped closer, his voice slower. "I am like you, Anna. I may have money, but that does not mean I am not human." She took a slow breath, feeling the conflict pull her in two directions. "So, what now? Do you plan to go back to your board meetings while I keep patching wounds down here?" His eyes held hers. "No. I plan to fix what is broken. But I cannot do that alone. I need someone who sees what I cannot." She shook her head, half in disbelief. "You mean you need me?" "I mean," he said gently, "I trust you. And that is not something I give easily." The chapel fell silent. For a moment, she saw not the billionaire, not the hospital owner, but the man who had worked beside her in the dark hours when no one else cared. "You are asking for a lot of faith," she said quietly. "I am offering the same," he replied. The candles flickered between them, throwing soft light over his face. For the first time since she discovered the truth, she did not feel anger, only exhaustion and something fragile beginning to rebuild. "If you really mean it," she said finally, "prove it. Not with money. With action." Ethan nodded. "Then come with me tomorrow. There is something I want you to see." When she left the chapel that night, the rain had stopped. The air smelled of wet earth and possibility. The next morning, she met him outside the hospital, where a car waited. They drove for nearly an hour into the outskirts of the city. The streets changed from glass towers to worn neighborhoods, until they stopped in front of a rundown building with a faded sign that read Westbridge Free Clinic. Anna's eyes widened. "This place closed years ago," she said. "Not anymore," Ethan answered. "We are reopening it. And I want you to run it." Her breath caught. "Run it? Why me?" "Because you understand what real care looks like," he said simply. "This will be your project, your leadership, your vision." Anna looked at the cracked walls and broken windows, imagining what it could become. For the first time, she felt the spark of hope stronger than pride. She turned to him, her voice soft. "You are impossible." He smiled faintly. "So are you." For the first time, she smiled back. Neither of them said it aloud, but both knew that something between them had begun to change. Renovating the Westbridge Free Clinic became more than just a project. For Anna, it became a second chance to believe in what she once fought for. For Ethan, it was redemption. Every morning, he arrived early, rolling up his sleeves, working beside construction crews, painting walls, fixing broken lights. He refused to stand aside like a distant benefactor. Anna watched him quietly, sometimes pretending not to notice the way he always chose the hardest tasks. She managed the paperwork, the medical supplies, the schedules, all while trying to ignore the strange warmth that had settled between them. One afternoon, as she reviewed volunteer applications, she heard the sound of hammering stop. Looking up, she saw Ethan standing by a window, sunlight cutting across his face. He looked different when he smiled, less like a CEO, more like a man who finally belonged somewhere. "You know," he said, "I used to think hospitals were only about buildings and numbers. But this," he gestured around them, "this feels like healing." Anna's lips curved slightly. "Do not get too sentimental, Mr. Cole. We still need running water." He laughed, a sound that filled the empty space like music. Weeks passed, and the clinic slowly came to life. Walls once cracked now gleamed white. Shelves filled with donated medicine. Children peeked through the glass doors, curious about what was coming. The grand opening was scheduled for the following month. But success, as always, brought attention, and not all of it good. One evening, Anna walked into a meeting room where Ethan sat with several hospital board members. Their faces were cold, sharp with disapproval. "Ethan," one of them said, "this clinic is draining funds from the main hospital. You cannot just divert resources because of personal charity projects." Ethan's jaw tightened. "This is not charity. It is purpose." "Purpose does not pay the bills," another replied. Anna stood frozen at the doorway. Ethan's voice stayed calm but firm. "If the board sees compassion as a liability, then perhaps we have lost sight of what medicine is." Silence followed, thick and uncomfortable. When the meeting ended, Anna stepped in. "You just challenged your own board," she said. "They will not forget that." "Let them remember," he replied. "I would rather be questioned for doing what is right than praised for doing nothing." She stared at him, admiration quietly blooming beneath her concern. The following weekend, they organized a community health fair to introduce the clinic. Crowds filled the street, families, children, elderly people who could not afford hospital care. Anna coordinated nurses while Ethan greeted visitors, shaking hands like a man who finally understood his place. Under a white canopy, they worked side by side for hours, treating patients, distributing food, and laughing over shared exhaustion. When the sun began to set, the lights around the clinic flickered on, casting a golden glow. Anna turned to Ethan, wiping sweat from her forehead. "Not bad for a volunteer," she teased. He smiled. "Not bad for a woman who swore she would never trust me again." They both laughed, the tension between them melting into something warmer, unspoken. As the last patient left, Ethan leaned against the doorframe, watching her pack supplies. "You have changed this place," he said softly. "No," she replied, glancing up. "We did." For a moment, their eyes met, and the air between them stilled. The hum of evening traffic faded. He reached out, brushing a speck of dust from her sleeve. The gesture was small, but her heart stumbled anyway. She looked away quickly. "You should rest. Tomorrow will be another long day." "Only if you promise to take a break too," he said. "Doctor's orders." "You are not my doctor," she countered. "No," he murmured, "but maybe I am something else." Before she could respond, his phone rang. The caller ID flashed, board secretary. His expression darkened. "I have to take this," he said quietly, stepping outside. Anna watched him through the glass as he spoke, his shoulders tense. Whatever he heard made his face harden. Trouble was coming again, she could feel it. And this time, it would not just threaten the clinic, it would test everything they had begun to build together. The following week began with silence. Ethan spent most of his days behind closed doors, meeting with lawyers and the hospital board. Rumors spread fast. Some claimed the board wanted to remove him as chairman, others whispered about a scandal involving misused funds. Anna tried to focus on her work at the clinic, but every phone call from the hospital made her heart race. Late one evening, Ethan appeared at the clinic unannounced. His tie was loose, his eyes shadowed from exhaustion. "We need to talk," he said quietly. She led him to the small office near the back. "What happened?" she asked. He exhaled slowly. "The board wants to shut us down." They say the clinic damages the hospital's image. They accused me of using company funds without approval. Anna's stomach tightened. That is absurd. Everything we used was documented. It does not matter, Ethan said, his voice heavy. They want me out. And they are going to make an example out of this project. She stared at him, anger replacing fear. So they punish you for helping people? That is the kind of image they want? He looked up at her, a tired smile flickering across his face. Welcome to the politics of compassion. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then Anna straightened, resolve shining in her eyes. We are not giving up. This clinic matters. People have come to rely on it. There has to be something we can do. Ethan studied her, something like pride flickering behind his fatigue. There might be one thing, he said. But it would require both of us to stand in front of them. Then we will, she said without hesitation. 2 days later, the hospital auditorium was packed. Board members, investors, and journalists filled every seat. Ethan stood at the podium, the weight of 1,000 eyes pressing on him. Anna sat in the front row, heart pounding. Cameras flashed. A board member cleared his throat. Mr. Cole, we have reason to believe you diverted funds to an unapproved facility. Do you deny it? Ethan's voice was calm. I do not. Every dollar I used went to create access to healthcare for those who could not afford it. If that is a crime, I accept the blame. Murmurs spread across the room. Another member sneered, you risked the hospital's reputation for some charity stunt. Before Ethan could respond, Anna stood up. Her voice, steady but emotional, filled the hall. That charity stunt saved hundreds of lives in the past month. I have watched children get treatment they never could have afforded. I have seen families cry with relief because someone finally cared. If that damages your reputation, maybe it is your values that need healing. The room went still. Even the journalists lowered their cameras. Ethan turned to her, eyes shining with gratitude. Then he faced the board again. You can remove me from my position, he said, but you cannot remove the truth. Medicine without heart is just business. I will not be part of that. With that, he set his resignation papers on the table and walked away from the podium. Gasps rippled through the audience. Anna followed him out of the hall, her pulse racing. Outside, the winter air bit at her cheeks. Ethan, she called, catching up to him. He turned, the city lights reflecting in his eyes. You just walked away from everything. Not everything, he said softly. Some things are worth losing to save what matters. She felt her throat tighten. What will you do now? Start again, he said. Maybe somewhere smaller. Somewhere honest. She hesitated, then reached for his hand. Wherever that is, I want to help. He looked at her, surprise flickering into a smile. You would do that? You believed in me when I had nothing, she said. Now it is my turn. For a moment, the cold seemed to fade. The sound of the city quieted until only their breathing remained. He squeezed her hand gently. Then let us rebuild. Together. And under the pale streetlights outside the hospital he once owned, Ethan Cole and Anna Reed took their first step into a new beginning. No contracts, no titles, only the truth that what started as a mistake had become something real. Months passed after Ethan's resignation, and life slowly began to rebuild itself around a new rhythm. The Westbridge Free Clinic, once threatened, now stood taller than ever. Donations poured in after the press conference went viral. People saw Ethan's speech as an act of courage, not rebellion. And Anna, now appointed as the clinic's director, had become the heart of the mission. Every morning, she arrived before sunrise, reviewing patient charts while the first light slipped through the blinds. Ethan still came by, though not every day. He no longer wore suits. Instead, he came in jeans and rolled-up sleeves, bringing boxes of supplies, fixing leaking pipes, and helping patients fill out forms. The city called him the billionaire who walked away, but around here, he was just Ethan. Sometimes, they worked together in comfortable silence. Other times, their conversations drifted from work to memories, childhood stories, regrets, dreams they never had time for. One afternoon, while they painted a new exam room, Anna laughed at the streak of white paint on his cheek. "You missed a spot," she said. "You mean artistic expression?" he replied, pretending to admire the uneven brush strokes. Their laughter echoed in the empty hallway, light and genuine. For the first time in years, Ethan looked free. Yet, even in peace, trouble had a way of finding them. A wealthy investor, the same one who once sat on the hospital board, visited the clinic under the guise of a donor. His smile was polished, but his words sharp. "Ethan, I have to admit, this little redemption project of yours is impressive," he said. "But we both know charity cannot last forever. If you ever want your old position back, the board might reconsider if you distance yourself from this nurse of yours." Ethan's jaw tightened, but he stayed calm. "This nurse has done more for this city than your entire board combined." The man smirked. "Be careful, Ethan. Reputation is a currency you cannot rebuild once it is spent." When the man left, Anna approached quietly. "He wants you back," she said. "They all do. You could have it all again." Ethan looked at her, the paintbrush still in his hand. "I already have what matters." She felt her heart stir but quickly looked away. "You should not say things like that," she whispered. "Why not?" he asked softly. "Because they make it harder to forget that this was supposed to be temporary," she said. He put the brush down. "Maybe it does not have to be." The air between them grew still, charged with words neither dared to finish. But before either could speak again, the clinic doors burst open. A woman rushed in, shouting for help. Her child was limp in her arms, burning with fever. Anna and Ethan sprang into action without hesitation. Hours passed in a blur of medicine, sweat, and prayer. Finally, the boy's breathing steadied. His mother wept, clutching Anna's hands. "Thank you," she sobbed. "You saved him." Anna smiled faintly. "No," she said, glancing toward Ethan. "We did." Later that night, after the last patient left and the clinic lights dimmed, Ethan found her outside, leaning against the railing. The city glowed in the distance. "You were incredible today," he said. She shrugged. "Just doing my job." "You have always done more than that," he replied. "You remind me why I started all this in the first place." She looked at him then, her eyes tired but bright. "And what now, Ethan? What happens next?" He smiled softly. "I do not know. Maybe for once, we do not plan. We just live." The wind picked up, carrying the scent of rain. She laughed quietly. "For someone who used to run an empire, you have become remarkably spontaneous." "Maybe you are a bad influence," he said. They stood there in silence for a while, watching the city breathe. The future was uncertain, the past heavy, but in that moment, it did not matter. For the first time, they were not bound by contracts or titles. Just two people who had lost everything and found something better: purpose, peace, and the beginnings of something neither dared to name yet. As thunder rolled softly in the distance, Anna whispered, "Maybe this is what healing really looks like." Ethan turned toward her, eyes gentle. "Maybe it is." And as the first drops of rain began to fall, neither of them moved. Because sometimes, standing still together was enough. The following weeks at the clinic were calm on the surface, but underneath, a storm was quietly forming. The growing success of the Westbridge Free Clinic had started to draw unwanted attention again. A few former hospital board members were furious that donors had shifted their contributions to the new facility. They began spreading rumors, claiming Ethan had used the clinic as a cover to regain public sympathy. One evening, as Anna was reviewing paperwork, she noticed a letter on her desk. It was addressed to her, but unsigned. Inside, the message was short and cold: "Walk away while you can." The truth about Ethan Cole is not what you think. Her stomach twisted. She knew there were people who wanted to hurt him, but something about the words felt personal. That night, when Ethan stopped by to drop off supplies, she handed him the letter. His face darkened as he read it. "They are getting desperate," he said quietly. "I should have seen this coming." "What are they talking about?" she asked. "What truth?" He hesitated. "Years ago, when I took over the hospital, there was a scandal. A patient died after a surgery I approved. The board covered it up, but I never forgave myself. I walked away from medicine after that. That is why I built this clinic to do something right for once." Anna's heart ached. "You did not tell me." "I did not want it to define us," he said. "But it looks like they intend to use it against me now." The next morning, headlines appeared online: "Disgraced former CEO runs illegal clinic." Photos of Ethan with Anna outside the facility filled every screen. The accusations were false, but the damage was instant. Donors froze their funding. Volunteers panicked. Inspectors arrived with clipboards and cold eyes. Anna tried to reason with them, but they treated her like a criminal. "This place is not going anywhere," she said firmly. "You can take your reports and your threats, but you cannot erase what we have done here." That night, the clinic stood silent. Ethan walked through the dark halls, stopping by the patient rooms that once overflowed with hope. Anna found him in the lobby, staring at the empty chairs. "We can fight this," she said. He looked up, exhaustion written across his face. "I do not know if I have any fight left." She stepped closer, her voice steady. "Then let me fight for you. You told me once that healing takes honesty. So let us be honest with them, with the city, with ourselves." He studied her for a long moment before nodding. "Tomorrow," he said softly. "We go public. No lawyers. No filters. Just the truth." She smiled faintly. "Finally, something you and I completely agree on." The next day, under gray skies, they stood side by side before a crowd of reporters. Anna took his hand, steady and unshaken, as cameras flashed. For the first time, she was not afraid. Whatever storm came next, she knew they would face it together. The press conference took place the next morning outside the clinic, under a gray and restless sky. Reporters crowded behind barricades, their microphones raised, their cameras blinking like 1,000 eyes waiting for blood. Ethan stepped up to the podium first, his expression calm but resolute. "There are things you should hear from me directly," he began, his voice steady. "Years ago, I made a mistake that cost a life. I carried that guilt in silence, and I left my position because of it. What I built afterward, the Westbridge Clinic, was not an attempt to erase my past, but to honor what I failed to protect." Murmurs swept through the crowd. Flashbulbs burst. One reporter shouted, "Are you admitting to negligence, Mr. Cole?" Ethan did not flinch. "I am admitting to being human. I made decisions I regret. But this clinic has saved lives. It has restored hope. If that is a crime, then I stand guilty." The crowd went quiet. Then Anna stepped forward, her hands trembling but her voice strong. "You have all seen the headlines," she said. "But you have not seen what happens here every day, the people who come with nothing and leave with a chance to live. You talk about reputation, about politics, but medicine is not a performance. It is a promise." Ethan kept that promise when no one else did. The air hung heavy with silence. The same investors who had once mocked them now looked uncertain. A woman from the crowd stepped forward, holding a small child in her arms. "My son is alive because of this clinic," she said loudly. "You can write whatever stories you want, but I know what they have done." Others followed: families, elderly patients, people who had found healing when everyone else had turned them away. Within minutes, the crowd that came for scandal became a sea of gratitude. Cameras turned from accusation to empathy. Ethan looked at Anna, his eyes full of something unspoken. He reached for her hand, and though the world was still watching, neither of them cared. The following days changed everything. The city council voted to recognize the Westbridge Clinic as an official public health center. Donations returned, stronger than before. Ethan's name, once dragged through the mud, became a symbol of integrity reborn. But the real victory was quieter: the laughter of children in the waiting room, the smell of coffee in the lobby, the light in Anna's eyes when she walked through the door every morning. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Ethan found her on the rooftop terrace overlooking the city. The wind lifted her hair, and for a moment, he just watched her, memorizing the peace that had taken years to find. "You saved me," he said softly. She turned, smiling. "No, Ethan. You saved yourself. I just reminded you where to start." He stepped closer. "Then maybe it is time I repay the favor." She frowned lightly. "What do you mean?" He reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded envelope. Inside was a document bearing both their names, the deed to the clinic, now transferred to joint ownership. "Because this was never just mine," he said. "It has always been ours." Her eyes widened, her voice breaking. "Ethan," he took her hand gently. "No more secrets, no more contracts. Only trust." The city lights flickered below, reflecting in her eyes as she whispered, "Then let us keep building it together." And for the first time, the world around them felt quiet, like every storm had finally passed. The months that followed felt like a second spring. The Westbridge Free Clinic flourished under their shared vision. The walls that once echoed with struggle now carried laughter, the scent of coffee, and the steady hum of life. Ethan worked beside the staff every day, still refusing any title. He fixed equipment, greeted patients, and made sure the lights never went out. Anna handled the heart of it all: the patients, the staff, the compassion that kept everything alive. They had built something together, something stronger than any scandal or contract could break. One afternoon, as the clinic celebrated its first anniversary, the small courtyard filled with music and chatter. Volunteers handed out balloons, children ran between tables, and patients returned to say thank you. Ethan stood quietly at the edge, watching the life that had grown from what was once just an idea. When Anna walked up beside him, she smiled at the sight. "We did it," she said softly. "You did it," he replied. "I just followed your lead." She shook her head. "You followed your heart. That is why people trust you now." He turned toward her then, the noise of the crowd fading into a distant blur. "There is something I have been meaning to ask you," he said. She looked at him, half amused, half curious. "That sounds serious." He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small box, worn at the edges. Inside was a simple silver ring. "This time, there is no contract, no condition. Just one question," he said. "Will you marry me not because of duty, but because this, us, is real?" For a long moment, she could not speak. Her eyes filled with tears, and she laughed through them. "Ethan Cole, you could have asked me without all these witnesses." He smiled. "I wanted them to see what real partnership looks like." She nodded slowly, her voice barely a whisper. "Yes. Of course, yes." The courtyard erupted in cheers as he slipped the ring onto her finger. It was not grand or glittering, but it felt right: steady, honest, earned. Later that evening, when the guests had gone and the clinic lights dimmed, they stood together by the window overlooking the city. The night air was cool, carrying the sound of distant traffic and the soft rhythm of rain beginning to fall. Anna leaned her head on his shoulder. "You know," she said quietly, "when I first met you, I thought you were just a volunteer." Ethan chuckled. "And I thought you would never forgive me once you found out the truth." She smiled against his shoulder. "I almost did not. But then you showed me that love, like healing, is not about perfection. It is about choosing to stay." He looked down at her, his voice tender. "Then I choose you. Every day." Outside, the rain grew heavier, washing the streets clean, reflecting the warm glow of the clinic's sign, their sign shining softly through the night. And as they stood there, hand in hand, the story that began with a lie ended with the simplest truth of all, that love, when built on kindness and courage, can heal even the deepest wounds.